or enacting resolutions or taking any other action that the council might be able to take itself. Just limited to presenting a proposed ordinance for the council's consideration. So whether or not what has been provided by the petitioners meets the requirements of Section 402, and the petition is to have the town appoint a regional planning committee to look at school unification with Newport. Whether or not that meets the requirements of the charter really depends upon whether what they have proposed is properly the subject of a town ordinance, or more properly the substance of something else, such as a resolution. And the Rhode Island courts have examined and explained the difference between an ordinance and a resolution. It's not something that we talk about all that often, but the court has laid it out in some detail. And essentially, an ordinance is a legislative act that prescribes some permanent rule of conduct or government that continues in force until the ordinance is repealed. So it would be something that is going to go in the code of ordinances, going to continue to govern the actions of the town or businesses or individuals for a period of time until it's either amended or repealed. A resolution, on the other hand, is something less than an ordinance. Essentially everything else that the town does, the town council does, except an ordinance. It is generally things of a special or a temporary character, a one-time vote on one particular matter that's not going to have a continuing effect for years into the future. And when you apply these definitions that the Rhode Island Supreme Court has laid out, I believe it's clear that what the petitioners have labeled as a proposed ordinance really is not an ordinance at all. It is not a permanent rule of conduct or government that is going to continue in force in the future. It's not a legislative act. It is not, if you look at the state statute, which is 1634, that authorizes the creation of these regional planning committees, it doesn't require them to be created by ordinance. It specifically says that they may be created by a majority vote of the town council. So if the council were to create one of these committees, you'd simply take a vote. There'd be no first or second reading. It would be a one-time act, a resolution. And once again, you come back to the fact that Section 402 is very limited in what it allows the voters to do, and it's limited to presenting a proposed ordinance. Now, I know that this petition was presented in the form of an ordinance, but the courts also addressed that issue, and it clearly states that whether it's called an ordinance or resolution doesn't really matter. It's what is the reality of what's being proposed. And the reality of what's being proposed here is not an ordinance, it's a resolution. Section 402 does not allow the voters to propose resolutions for adoption by the council or the voters. And as a result, this petition, in my opinion, does not meet the very narrow requirements of Section 402. And I've laid that out in the memo that I provided to the council. And so, in my opinion, since this doesn't meet the requirements of Section 402, it is my opinion that the council should not take any action on this.
Thank you.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. How did we get to this point? I mean, I'd like to know, and I'm going to, maybe I'll ask, I know Councilor Von Villas is a consultant for this committee, correct?
Advisor.
Okay. How it got here, and if anybody, how, I mean, it seems like you went through a lot to get something that isn't legal or isn't appropriate. Maybe it's not, maybe not legal is the right terminology, the right verbiology, but how it's not the right, it's not right. It doesn't fit this. So, but I think it's important for me to know how did we get here with this, and because it seems like there was a lot of time involved in this, not only on the council's part, but obviously on your part. it was something that apparently wasn't reviewed. Councilman Bongo.
Okay. Well, I had prepared something to say, which I think will answer your question as well.
Okay.
Okay. And if you'd be a little patient with me.
I'll be very patient with you.
All
If you
right.
could speak up a little bit, because
Okay,
I'm
I
having
can do
trouble
that.
hearing you.
I can do my teacher's voice. That better?
The scolding
I
voice,
recognize that voice.
Okay.
the disciplinarian voice. Go ahead.
No, that's my teacher's voice.
Okay.
People can hear me so they understand what I'm trying to say.
All right.
All right. 1 year ago in June, representatives from Newport, supported by a room full of Middletown residents, requested that the Middletown Town Council agree to begin discussions about school regionalization. The Town Council refused to discuss the issue. A month later, in July, the issue was resurrected with even more resident support, and the Town Council refused. Beginning in September, a committee was formed in another effort to convince the Town Council that there was support throughout the town for discussions. A petition was developed, substantial number of signatures were collected, and the petition was presented to the Town Council in January, asking again for discussions. The Town Council declined. Undeterred, CESU, the Citizens for Exploring School Unification, formulated a petition that included an ordinance as required under town charter in an effort to initiate discussions that would result in a proposal. We were referred to that particular provision. Several drafts were reviewed, and a final draft was sent to 2 separate local attorneys for advice, both of whom possessing specific knowledge and understanding of the requirements under the town charter. Eventually, one of them connected directly with the current town solicitor, who reviewed the proposed petition and ordinance, made a few edits, and returned the final copy to one of the attorneys, who then forwarded it to me as the final version. Using that final version, CESU began collecting signatures. They used every opportunity to connect with people, collecting signatures one by one, even going door to door. Then the virus hit, and personal contact was forbidden. So they used other strategies to collect the signatures, including costly mailers and setting up areas in open spaces to protect both themselves and the public near businesses who gave them permission. Over a 6-month period, they collected the signatures of the required 10% of the voters, and they submitted the petition to the Town Council for 2 public hearings. Now, however, the town solicitor, the same person who wrote the final version as related to the town charter and sent it to the attorney who was helping CESU, has declared that the process is flawed and cannot go forward as was previously scripted by his own hand. In spite of the above circumstances, it would seem ethical and honorable at this time to recognize that almost 1,200 voters petitioned the town to form a study committee for discussion with Newport and to identify representatives. Therefore, I make a motion that the Town Council approve joint discussions with Newport in a study committee focused on potential school regionalization, and appoint 2 members of the Town Council and 1 member of the school committee as representatives. And if you have any questions about anything that I've said, I'll be glad to elaborate. I have copies of emails and so forth that I brought with me.
Okay, you made a motion. But obviously there's gonna be some discussion. let me just say this. I'm going to candidly say this. I don't think it's appropriate that go to the solicitor by an independent group to solicit legal services from our solicitor who works for the town of Middleton without the support or the acknowledgement by or request by the town council.
And he did say that to me in the beginning.
Well, I'm saying it tonight because I think it's totally inappropriate. I
Okay,
think you had no business doing that.
okay. But it was
Okay,
done.
because you basically what you're doing, you're opening up an avenue for anybody that doesn't have council support to utilize our solicitor. And it is our solicitor who we pay for, the taxpayers pay for.
But the door was opened and you can't close it now.
That's
Mr. President, may I address that?
Mr. Solicitor,
I just want to be clear for the record here. I was contacted by Mrs. Von Villas. I told her at that point in time and
Yes.
several other times I could not provide legal advice,
Yes, you did.
that her group needed to retain their own attorney, and that section 402 was limited to proposed ordinances. I then was contacted by at least 2 attorneys that were having some discussions with the group, and I told them the same thing, that they needed to get their own attorney, that section 402 was limited to ordinances. One attorney sent me a form of the petition, which I did not write. I did not write what is being provided to this group.
No, he didn't.
And I responded to him and said, yeah, it's got to be an ordinance, looks like an ordinance, make it, put it in the
Okay.
form of an ordinance. And that was essentially the involvement. So,
okay. I
I
appreciate that
and
clarity.
I think,
You didn't lead me to believe, I don't know if anybody else, that you led me to
That
believe.
he wrote it.
That Peter wrote it.
No, I didn't say he wrote it.
You
I
led me
said
to
there were
believe
some
that.
edits that were made. The
right.
copy was sent to him.
okay.
Okay, well, let's clarify. it.
Okay, but,
The copy was sent to him, okay? And there were tweaks made and they were sent back to the attorney that was working for us, Gravis.
Mr. President, if I
Go
might
ahead.
also just add, the issue that really is at the crux of my opinion tonight is not something that I had looked at. Frankly, we've probably spent 7 or 8 hours reviewing this matter since it was over the past week, since it was referred by the council. And that's certainly not an amount of time that I would be able to spend on anything that's not referred officially by the council. So this issue of, even though it's written as a ordinance, it's really a resolution. It's not something that, we talk about all the time. But it is something that came up during the research when we dug into it and really looked at it from every potential angle, because we did spend a lot of time on it because it is an important issue. And that issue came up this week during that review, as opposed to an offhand comment prior to this coming to the council. So I just want to make that clear.
okay. Does anybody want to make any comments? Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, and I thank you for clarifying that nothing should go to the solicitor without the whole council approval. I think that is a standard that should be practiced. I think that it has been deviated from the past in defense of Councilor Von Villas. And so it's nice to rope it back and, make sure that before we utilize and spend money on anything that the council agrees it's worthy to spend money on in the solicitor's time. And, things going to utilizing that section 402, this has happened before where items, voters have gotten together. It happened, 2 years ago with Councilor at the time, Viveros, and Councilor Toronto's tax reform. And at the nth hour, it failed because that process was not followed properly. And so I think that this isn't new, unfortunately. And so it does happen. And I think that maybe we as a council should in the future look at section 402 and maybe other communities, if ours is so limited, to allow that voter initiated governance that can be followed through by the voters, because I think that's very important. Thank you.
Councilor Lombardi.
So I want to be clear. I agree with Councilor Flynn that
we shouldn't be utilizing, we, when I mean the council, are an outside group, shouldn't be utilizing the solicitor for everything that comes out there. But as counselors, I mean, I think we all have asked the solicitor for opinions on things before we bring it and put it on a docket or make sure it fits. So I don't want to hamstring the council or tie our hands so that we can't ask Peter questions, or we can't go through Sean and ask Peter questions. That I want to be clear of. But in your premise, I agree with you that we should be careful how we spend extra money, or how a group like CESU, quite frankly, shouldn't be getting advice from the solicitor. Let their attorney, let them pay for an attorney and get their attorney to go to the solicitor and get advice. We shouldn't be just offering his services out, or, even in an advisory position, Councilor Von Villas, I am just like, I would have just probably backed off and let the rest of the group handle this. You're a town councilor. There's a conflict as far as I'm concerned.
Can I?
Hang on, I'm done. You can,
Let me
yeah.
just say, we initiated Councilor Flynn agreeing with me tonight, which is an rare.
Yeah, it
But
is.
let me just say this, that my point was, the council voted this down. They voted it down. They did not support it. If the council had supported, and then we went to the solicitor, is one thing, but it was voted down by the body. It wasn't voted, to go ahead with this. It was voted down. Okay, go ahead, Councilor Von
I
Villas.
just want to respond to something that Mr. Lombardi said. I asked some superficial questions of Peter at the very beginning. That's absolutely true. And he did say to me at the very beginning that he could not give me information.
Okay.
I did talk to him briefly about, I think it was chapter 16. And he said to me that it's a charter question. And that was a simple response that he gave me. It wasn't advice, it was a simple response, okay? I did not ask him for more. I perhaps asked him a couple of questions, but he was very good. He did not respond to me. He did what he should do, okay? Frankly, I went to outside attorneys, 2 of them, okay? Unbeknownst to me, one of them directly contacted him, and they had a discussion about the situation and whatever was taking place. And there was legal advice exchanged at that point. I have copies of it, okay? There was legal exchange done, but I did not do that. And the attorney did that, okay? The outside attorney, all right? So yes, I respected his position once he made it clear. There were a couple of times where I just had to ask a simple question like, do you mean this or do you mean that? But other than that, nothing in very specific or nothing in terms of advice, more in terms of interpretation, okay? But the fact of the matter is that the attorney that was working with us is the one that spoke directly with our solicitor, okay? And he did that by his choice,
Okay.
not by mine.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, Councilor Bott, you get a quick follow-up?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. Barbara, I'm going to tell you how I feel about this. Your involvement with CESU as an advisor and your position as a town councilor, I don't know how you can vote on this. I think it's a conflict. I think you should recuse. I think it's a conflict. You have been involved with them since day one. You were actually, look, let's face it, they were formed and you're part of it. And you advised them. You are a town councilor. You have to vote on, you can't vote on this. You should recuse. That's how I feel. I could be wrong, but I believe that. There's a conflict.
And what you just said has some validity. I will not argue that. It probably has some validity. That does not change the fact that here we are.
This ordinance is plain as day. I don't know how you read it, but I know how I read it.
Okay, but here we are. Here we are a year later, and there are over because they didn't all sign, over 1,200 voters in this community who support going to discussion. So I have merely put on the docket or on the table, let me finish.
All right.
On the table at this point, I have merely put on the table a motion that you let the discussions go forward. They're not asking for you to commit to regionalization.
No.
They're asking to
So-
let you talk.
So to put my cards on the table, I had two people from CESU contact me. And I'm going to tell you who they were. Greg Hewitt and Art Weber. Both contacted me, asked me if I would support this.
Well, why shouldn't they?
Wait a minute. Let me finish.
Yeah, let's try to.
I know. Let me get to the point though, because I wanted to know where I'm going to land on this. I told both of them that I asked Greg Hewitt a specific question. I said, when it says here, you want to sit down with the people from Newport. And I asked him, have you talked to the people from Newport since they decided to put the question on the ballot concerning Pell School and Rogers? They spent $300,000 on a study to do that. Have you asked that question? Have you gotten the support from the school committee and the city council? And Greg told me, no, we haven't done that. I said, well, when you come back to me, this is exactly what I said to him. When you come back to me and you tell me that we have a willing partner to sit at the table, should the council endorse this, then I might seriously support it. But he never got back to me. Since that time, I've had 3 members of the Newport School Committee contact me and ask me, what are they doing? They don't even know if we'll sit at the table with them. From 3 people on the school committee. Now I'm going to ask you, do you know if Newport will be a willing partner and sit with us? Because if that bond passes, I don't know who you're going to sit at the table with.
Okay, I'm going to give you your opportunity. Vice President.
Thank you, Bob. So, when Peter forwarded his findings this hour, Bob forwarded Peter's findings to us this afternoon, and I read it. I wasn't clear on it, so I called Peter because I wanted to make sure I was reading it right, and it was clear. And basically, he told me exactly what he said. I said, well, how does it get to this point where people go out for a year and gain all this work is done? And I think we all recognize that, Mrs. Vaughn, that, you know, the work that was done, the hard work, the 1,200 signatures, how does it get to the point where all of a sudden it's not legal? So I was basically told, Peter basically told me, look, I don't work for that group. I don't work for any group. Dennis had to go through the same thing last year with his tax exploration committee where he couldn't use a solicitor as well. That's not what it's for, right? Unless it's directed by the entire council. So, okay, we're here. I get that, right? One of the things that Peter said to me this afternoon that stuck in my mind was that, and you didn't say it tonight, was the fact that these types of petitions, and I didn't realize it till he said it, anybody could go up and get 1,200 signatures and go, not anybody, I don't mean to make it sound that easy, but get 1,200 signatures and change, hey, we want to appoint 2 fire chiefs, not 1. And you made that type of reference where that's why this section 402, and I believe the forefathers got it right. That's why it's narrow like that. And it's not broad like Narragansett where you can go out and do something like this. And I believe that's the way you explained it. And at that point, it made sense to me. Otherwise, you can go get signatures and change anything in town and override everything the council does. I do believe that the forefathers got it right. And that's why it's potentially narrow like this, so that changes aren't made if somebody gets upset and goes out signatures. And I will say this, I thought the same thing about that Rick said. I said, well, Newport's moving forward with this. Has anybody contacted them? I actually asked Bob that the other day. Has anybody contacted Newport to find out, do they even want to sit at the table? And so, you know, I can appreciate the hard work, but I'm certainly not going to go against what, you know, if our solicitor says it's legal, that's what we pay him to do. It's illegal and it's not right. I'm certainly not going to go against that. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Okay. Councilor Flynn,
Thank
back
you.
to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to respond to some of the conversation, I do want to, again, applaud Councilor Von Villis for responding to 1,200 voters. There's definitely a wave of interest on this topic in town. So if she's making benign inquiries to the solicitor, which we can do on behalf of constituents, I support that. So long as it doesn't get to, be a lengthy amount of time that the town's being charged for, because she's doing it on behalf of constituents. So I do support that. I think that to your point, Council Lombardi, about the conflict of interest, I think we have all voted on things that we have knowledge on and have been involved in, from the beach exploratory subcommittee to senior housing. We vote on things that we have worked on. So I'd certainly want the solicitor to weigh in on your, and maybe it's different, but I would like to get some input on that. I know that the Ethics Commission conflict of interest, two main points is if you have a direct relation which goes down to the first cousin level, or if you're going to be financially impacted for better or for worse. So, I just would like some additional consult there. Do you want to jump in, Councilor Rodriguez? You can if it's on this particular point. But then I'm not done. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes.
Are you done?
No.
You
Do you
got
want me to
something new?
finish? Shall I finish?
Okay.
Okay, so that's
Continue
point
your
2. I only
recap.
have 2 more. So, and also on section 402, you may think the forefathers have it right, Councilor Rodriguez. However, getting signatures is only a step to putting it on the ballot to see if a majority actually thinks it's a good idea. There's 7 counselors. Do we always get it right? I doubt it. So I just think that it's important that there is a majority governance alternative or availability. And so last point is, let's see. Mr. Regan, I had sent you some additional questions on this proposal that was sent in by CESU on the actual verbiage of it. And so,
I don't recall seeing that.
yeah, so, well, of course it was, earlier in June. It was on June 11th.
Okay.
And your response was, when I review the proposal, the write-up, I will keep your questions in mind.
Okay.
So I still have questions about the impact or end result of this verbiage and what taking any action on it would mean. I just wanted to
Okay.
put that on the table because it was not clear. I don't know if I should go through the questions or just leave it at that.
Well, I didn't review any other questions because once I got to the point of coming to the point where it didn't meet the requirements of section 402, sort of the analysis ended at that stage.
So if there was
So-
going to be any proposed motion or action on this verbiage, I would not be ready because I had outstanding questions. I just wanted to
Vice President.
put that out there.
So, Terry, just a quick response. I mean, I don't want to debate with you. I mean, you have your opinion, I have my opinions respectfully. But the Beach Exploratory Committee and the Tax Exploration Committee that you referred to, those were approved by the council. This was not approved by the council. That's the clear difference. So that's not really a fair comparison.
Yes.
And I do believe the forefathers got it right. I truly do. I mean, we don't see a lot of, did they get everything right? No. Do we get everything right? Absolutely not. But I do think in this particular case, that's why it's narrow like that.
Okay.
My opinion.
I think all the points that can be taken are out there on top of the table right now. I'm going to go back to the first motion that we have. We have a motion, and it's been seconded to receive this ordinance on the first reading, which appropriately I think should be withdrawn. Would you agree, Mr. Solicitor?
Yes, because it's not properly before you under section 402.
Okay.
Okay, motion to withdraw the ordinance on its first reading.
Second?
Withdraw the motion.
To withdraw the motion.
Well, the motion, sorry.
Does everybody understand that? Okay, so we have a motion second to withdraw that first motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The second motion that we have in front of us, the motion by Council Von Billis, and I'll allow her to give us the motion one more time, because I didn't hear a second, but give us the motion one more time.
Okay, I make a motion that the town council approve joint discussions with Newport in a study committee focused on potential school regionalization and appoint 2 members of the town council and 1 member of the school committee as representatives.
I'm going to second that motion because I think out of courtesy, any motion presented should be discussed.
Okay. If the discussion that we're going to have, is it going to be new discussion? Okay, do we have a second? Right, now discussion. Council Flynn, you want to talk on it now?
Well, I think that I have already stated, unfortunately, I have outstanding questions on the verbiage of exactly what that would entail or that would.
But you seconded the motion,
I
correct?
did, out of courtesy for additional discussion or points.
Okay, so we have a motion, it's been seconded.
One question for Council Von Billis.
Council Lombardi.
One question. And it's pertinent to your question, your motion. Has CESU received support from the city of Newport, from the school committee and the city council, stating that they would sit at the table and discuss this issue? Have you received that assurance? Given the fact that they've approved the issue, the proposal to put a bond on the ballot for Rogers and for Pell School.
All right, I've got to answer this very carefully,
Oh,
okay?
just tell me.
No, I have to answer it very carefully because lots of times there are discussions which take place which I cannot refer to. Has there been anything official? If I had to answer that question, the answer would be no. Are there indications that the Newport people are waiting to see what will happen here? Yes, there are indications of that. I cannot give you any more than that because it would be breaking confidence.
Okay. Any further conversation? Council Trump.
The one thing that I still don't get over is the fact that our school committee has had no opinion on this.
Great
Right?
point.
Great point.
And I was at a school committee meeting when this organization came to speak. And Councilwoman Von Villas spoke at this after Mr. Hewitt got out there and badmouthed the council. Okay? Badmouth the council this, the council that, and then they get up and they're talking to them and they asked the school committee for an opinion and they said, we have no opinion. The council has no opinion. So it's a yo-yo. The council doesn't have an opinion, or then they're not going to make an opinion. You know, I wish that they put as much energy into talking with each other because there's a lot of collaboration already going on with special ed, with trade schools, with STEM. There's a lot going on. So, you know, I didn't like the bad mouthing of the council. I didn't like this evening when you're saying that our town solicitor scribed this document. I mean, that's misleading. So, you know, this issue of what we're going to do with our children in the schools is not going to go away. We need to do something. So I think we should focus on this. We should find a way to make this work. I mean, are we out there, is Newport in the bid with us right now to take their children to educate them in our schools and move them around? Because it's going to be about 5 years while they build this school that they're going to be putting the kids into different municipalities. Sean, is there an RFP for that?
No,
So what are they going to do with all the kids when they're building the school?
I don't know.
I thought there was a petition out there saying they're going
But
to be
there's no
tweaking it.
guarantee on that, Council of Toronto. It's all speculation from what I see.
Okay. Well, I'll wait to hear that.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
okay. Any further conversation? We have a motion that's been seconded to move forward with this. All in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
So what was the count, Madam Clerk?
1 yes and 6 no.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Town Council matters. Communication of Council Toronto to discuss forming a community outreach program designed after the program that the Lieutenant Governor rolled out in Cumberland.
Motion to receive said communication.
Second.
A motion and second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Council Toronto.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the program. I had talked about this at previous town council meetings, and we had the lieutenant governor come in and speak with us in regards to this program that he established in Cumberland. I had seen him on TV in an interview when he was talking about how the community was working with the school department to have after-school tutoring and guidance that was actually sponsored by the actual town itself, not through the school. And so I had brought that forward as just for us to hear that. And my understanding, it's been in place for over 10 years and they're getting a lot of good results. And the kids, their grade points are up and it's been really received well by the school in Cumberland as well as the community. I had contacted the Lieutenant Governor after I saw his article in the paper about his New Year resolution, which was to go around to all the municipalities and communities to explain what he had done and also share with them a financial structure of how it was set up. And there are a few other communities that are interested in this program as well. So Sean was kind enough, he reached out as well to get some additional information, what he sent to me here. I really like this program. The school started up a program Beyond the Bell, which was the ability to do counseling and tutoring after school. It's been a really big success in Middletown. I had a call with the superintendent and a few people at the school to talk about teleeducation. And my understanding is it's been very successful, educating the kids at home. And they've got a real robust summer program that's going to be happening. And they're actually going to, I asked them if they're going to reach out to Newport and Portsmouth with this program because supposedly there are hundreds of kids who have signed up for this. And they said they were going to maybe reach out to the other communities and see if they want to participate in it because a lot of it is teleeducation. So they can get further education in math and sciences and get ready for the next year type of thing. So it was a good program. So I was hoping, and I put this in before we had this virus. And so it's hard for me to say, well, let's justify putting more money towards this when, the budget is just so tight at this time and we've got other things that we should focus on. And I'd like to maybe continue this to another time. And I'll work closely with Beyond the Bell with the school and see how we can coordinate the resources around this. So I'd like to continue this to another time.
I applaud your enthusiasm on this, and I think it's a great program, personally. Have you had any conversations with the school committee or with the school administration? And if so, could you share that with us and tell me how they
Yeah,
felt?
you remember the superintendent came in here and was talking a little bit about Beyond the Bell, and she gave kudos to Council Flynn and myself in regards to thinking outside the box, she said, in this program, and it kind of.
But I mean, has anything morphed from that? Has anything come
I
out of
haven't
that?
gotten any further detail with them in regards to this program. They just said if we do something similar, and they read up on it, I sent them the information, so they're aware of it, that we would work with them in conjunction with them, which I'm all for. I mean, more people working on this program, and it's really to help kids get further education after school and guidance. And so I think it's a strong program. I was surprised. I thought when I went to meet the lieutenant governor that it would have been like 2 years he was doing the program. 10 years, 10 plus years. So I was pretty impressed with that. He has a nice package that we did get. So again, I was going to try to go through this in more detail, but again, with the budget the way it is at this time, I really can't be asking to.
Yeah, I would
another
certainly
department.
encourage you to bring it back at another time. Does anybody want to make any comments on this? Vice President?
So I've saved my notes from when he was here.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Because I think it's important. And again, I applaud you as well, Dennis. 13 years working program is what he said. 50 million in school improvements in infrastructure. That's what they've done. Need to have a good relationship with the school committee to be able to, for this to work. High school needs to become a school of choice. they actually created a new department, the Mayor's Office of Children, Youth and Learning. And it's done by retirees, volunteers, unemployed teachers, also a Mayor's Youth Commission, engaging young people in the youth movement, engaging our youth in government. And this is the thing that stuck out to me the most with what he said. Because I believe that night he brought Charlie Lombardi with him, right?
Yes,
The
he
mayor of North Providence. Education has to become a culture where everyone is involved in every aspect of education, and where education is an everyday conversation with everyone to be able to create this culture. That stuck out to me. And the last note, bullet point I took was, the reason this is important because there's a parent information gap. And that gap is 90% of parents, this is what he said that night, believe their children are proficient in math and reading, where the reality is 27% are proficient in math and 34% are proficient in reading in those two categories. So I just thought I'd share that because I knew at some point this may come up again, and I always look at those notes because I envision that as well, that it's important that it needs to create that culture for us to get where we need to go.
No, I agree.
And he was, and the point to that, Paul, is that the amount of time that kids are in school versus how much time they're not in school, and this is a year-round type of program. This isn't just while they're in school, this is year-round.
Right.
And it's actually expanded into the community a little bit, because we do have adults who need to come learn English. We have adults who need to learn to do certain things in the community, and this is a way of the community outreach. Primary focus is the kids in the school and the guidance and things along those lines, which we can't let kids fall behind. And if they fall behind in math and sciences and English, they just get further and further behind, and they get a bad attitude, and they're not in it. So this is able to help keep them up to speed. And I just thought it was really a good program. So I'd like to, again, continue this. and
Absolutely.
Keep the conversation going.
No, I think you should. Thank you very much for bringing it up.
Thanks, Dennis.
Okay, next item. Communication of Council of Toronto to discuss increasing the town exemptions for seniors, veterans, and physically handicapped.
Motion to receive said communication.
And motion second to receive, all in favor?
Aye.
Council of Toronto?
Thank you, Mr. President. As you know, we formed a subcommittee to look at senior exemptions, veterans exemptions, and myself and Councilwoman Mrs. Santos, Teresa Santos, and Mr. Lombardi, Councilman Lombardi. We're sitting on that on that subcommittee appointed by the council, and I thought that was a great job we did, and we were able to fine tune it, make some changes to it. But at that time, I think we were all in agreement that we need to come back and revisit these numbers, because I don't think the numbers really stand up to what the seniors need, okay? And Mrs. Von Villis had something in the paper recently and said that, exemptions should go to people who need it. And I agree. I think that's important, and that we're trying to target the people who need it. And I think our seniors are a target audience that we do need. And I think we do look at the earning potential, the people they're earning their income, which then qualifies them for a bucket of exemption off of their assessment. Okay, so we're kind of looking at that. So a lot of the exemption we offer to seniors and veterans are based on their income and their needs. Okay, so I think we kind of can check that box. But I'm open to hearing people's suggestions. There's a couple other programs that we've talked about that I'd like to get George maybe to come and speak on at some point here. It's the criteria for deferral of taxes. So you're 65 years of age or older, the assessment date for your year from which you can defer is claimed. So it goes through, and I sort of get it, but I have a few questions, and I want to talk a little bit about that program that is actually on our books. And then there's the criteria for freezing the tax rate and the valuation. And that's when you've been here for over 20 years, and there's some really limiting income levels. I don't think we have anyone taking advantage of this program because it's just not very flexible. So there's just a couple I'm going to look into a little bit more. But I did want to consider what the council's appetite is in regards to budgeting this year to assist the seniors in some way, whether it's 5%, 10%, something to keep the ball rolling and helping the seniors weather the storm that we're in right now. and going forward. I think it's earnest that we do it. So that's why I'm putting it out for discussion.
No, I agree, and I think it's very appropriate, although I don't think this the right time tonight to discuss this. I think very shortly, within a matter of a couple of weeks, we're going to be going into the budget time. In fact, we're going to be talking about the budget dates in July. And I think that those budget meetings is a time where we're getting our numbers, we're crunching our numbers, we're putting our budget together. We can see what we can afford to do and what we cannot afford to do.
Okay.
And I think that would be the appropriate time, in
Okay.
my opinion. Anybody want to make a comment? Councilor Santos.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Toronto, would you consider continuing this?
Sure, yes.
Okay, would you make the motion, please?
I'll make a motion to continue this to, say, a meeting in July after we've had a chance to review the budget and see if there's something we can absorb.
I'd like to amend that into one of our budget meetings in July. I think that's the appropriate time to bring it up.
Okay, to a budget meeting in July.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Discussion.
Oh, discussion.
Sean, would this give enough time to be on the next year's, the upcoming tax bill? Or would this be pushed off until the following year? Because the tax bills will go out in late August, mid-August, right?
Correct. I would need to discuss that with George. I think it would be okay.
This would require an amendment to the ordinance, so it would require 2 readings as well, because those exemptions are codified in the town ordinances.
Mhm.
So it would require 2 meetings to do it once you come up with your number.
Okay.
It's tight, so I think it would just be dependent on timing.
And that was at the forefront of my mind, was the timing of this. Certainly support it if it makes financial sense, but I know the timing was going to be maybe an issue.
I think it'll be close. Because tentatively, well, we'll discuss the dates, but tentatively right now, we have a council meeting for July 6th. And I'm going to propose tonight that we have our budget meetings on July 20th and 27th. So if it gets mentioned out there on the 6th, we could maybe get it in by July 31st, which would put it on the next year. Okay? So, all right. Good.
I made a motion. We voted?
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Toronto. Okay, next item, communication with Councilor Toronto to make a motion to restructure the format of the town project update section of the regular document.
Motion to receive said communication.
Second?
Okay, motion second to receive, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Councilor Toronto?
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. What I have here is, a few years back, I had made a motion to add a section to the docket, and it was called Town Business Update Section. And it reads, there may be a town business update section on the town council docket. The town administrator will review a list of outstanding projects. Project list must be provided to the town administrator by the town council 1 week prior to the closing of an agenda. Giving a quick update on the status of each project. Town business update is limited to 15 minutes total. The town council member would like more detail on any project or topic. The council member must submit an agenda item to be placed under the town council portion of the future agenda. Okay? Which I appreciate that we put this in place. I'm just like to, Mr. President, you and I had talked, and we were talking about all the projects that we have going on, and we said, as we do business, if we do project meetings where we have, like in my business, we have so many projects that are going on. We have a meeting once a month, and we list all the projects, and we give an update, quick update on each of the projects. That way I don't have to worry about remembering every project that's going on, and the people who are responsible can just talk to what's happening with that project. Because sometimes I find like a project will improve a project and then it disappears for a while. Then you got to remember to either ask for an update or wait for it to come back up again. So I was hoping to, like to make a few changes to this. One being that now you have to give it a week before the actual, the docket, the closeout to us being able to add anything to the docket. So it's an additional week. So to get anything in a project, you'd have to submit it by next week, right? So you got to make it happen, which is fine. I mean, but it does move quickly. I'd like to see if we could actually have a list that's prioritized by the council. That would be a standing list of projects that we could get a monthly update, maybe after they have their department meetings, because I understand they have a department meeting once a month and they talk about all the projects and where they're at with the projects. I think that would be a good time for them then to come to us and update us on these projects and where they're at and what steps are there. And just a 1 to 2 minute update. Sean's done it for us before. And then once it's done, it comes off the list. And if anyone wants more detail on any of those things, projects on the list, then add it to the town council docket section. But this is just a quick run through. It's documented, it's recorded. I'd like to put it on the website so people can go in and say, hey, what's going on with the roads? What's going on with the Atlantic Beach District? What's going on with multiple purpose fields? What's happening with just different projects that we have? Rather than asking me about them, which they do, I could just say, go to the website and you can see exactly what's happening with each project. You know, instead they come and ask, wait, that's what's going on with the fire investigation, right? Where's that? So I'd like to make a motion that we have a standing project list that's prioritized by the council, that we can get a once a month update on these outstanding projects, and the projects would be prioritized by the council.
Okay. That's your motion?
Yeah.
I'll second that motion. Any conversation? Hearing none.
Wait, excuse me.
Would you limit the amount of time that was allocated for that? Because that could turn into an extremely lengthy questioning and answering session.
Well, I think Council Toronto alluded to that. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's right now, it's got 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Okay, so you would hold it to 15 minutes.
And it's really just, Councilwoman Von Billis, it's really just a quick update, you know, from,
We've never
Boom,
had a
boom,
quick
boom.
update.
I know, when we got into it, we were asking a lot of
We don't do
questions.
anything quickly.
I understand.
So this is just for me.
But I
from
think
my
we did it-
perspective, it's prolonging more discussion about stuff that's not as important as keeping the progress of the town government moving.
And
Thank you.
I think you'll see that as we're getting updates, and people can go to the site and actually see it and what's happening, and that we're updating the projects. I mean, they don't have to wait to update the projects until we have our meeting. I mean, if something substantially changes, we should be changing this online. And we can read about it, but I'd like to be said in public so it could be recorded and people could watch it as well. And I think you'll see that we can go through these. Sean's done it for us before. He went through a whole list, and in 15 minutes, we were done. So I think we'll be okay.
Mr. Brown wants to make a comment. Mr. Brown, and I remember, I don't think it's been this last term, but I think prior to that, you used to give us an update from your department heads once a month about things that they were working on. I don't know if that would work. I don't know how much energy or time is involved for you to put that together, but I'm going to let you, I know you want to make a comment.
I'm just chasing this project report. So the council's adopted a rule about how this section is supposed to work. And it's rule number 27 in your minutes. It's an amendment from the original way that you did this. And I think on a couple of occasions I've pointed out that you know, the council doesn't practice the rule. And I guess my concern is, as you're asking me to do this and as people are making motions, even Councilor Toronto's memo doesn't match the motion that was made this evening. So I guess I'd ask the council to clarify exactly what you're asking me to do, and ultimately amend the council rules so that I truly understand what your expectation is of me, because it seems that this continues to be a moving target, and it is going to be difficult right now based on the fact that we still operate in a state of emergency. The council is making changes in how the town government's working. I do have a lot of work on my plate right now, and this is additional work. So again, I'd ask the council maybe to pause and make sure that what you're asking me to do is what you want. Because it is going to take up some of my time.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other comments?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
I know they have department meetings once a month. I've asked to go to these department meetings, and I'm told I cannot go to the department meetings because I might tell someone to do something. That's the reason I got. You can't go to the department head meeting because you might say something that will actually tell someone to do something. We know we cannot tell anyone to do anything or ask them to do anything. It's got to go through Sean. So this department head meeting happens, and they talk about all these projects. So I don't see where the additional work is. It's already there. I'm sure they're taking notes during the meeting on these projects. So just update the project list and come tell us, the council about it once a month. What happened in the department meeting? And what happened to all these projects? I got a whole list of projects. I probably don't have them all. I've got the beach and campground, the school bond, senior affordable housing, Middletown IT roadmap, school consolidation, keep Middletown clean, multi-purpose fields, fire investigation, beyond the bell, stormwater runoff, roads, Atlantic Beach District, Quinnick sidewalks, West Side RFI, tax reform. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that got out there. And I just feel that it would be helpful to me to have an update once a month on each of the outstanding projects, and we can help prioritize the projects of what we feel we should be working on. So that's just and if you like, I could read that I would like to make a motion to restructure the format of the town project update section of the regular document. I would like to have an agreed upon list of town projects that we would like to be updated at, I said at each meeting, but I'll say once a month. These changes would provide 2 to 5 minute updates on each project, and if the councilors would like more information, they could put it on the regular docket under town business. I'd like to add the project list to the Middletown website so the residents can keep up on town projects. That's my motion.
Okay. You already made that motion, correct?
Okay.
Mr. President?
Councilor
Did I
Lombardo.
hear
So-
you correctly? You said 2 to 5 minutes on each.
But with a 15-minute cap.
No, I know that, but he just said 2 to 5 minutes on each project. That's what I thought he just said.
I think that's just a window of
That's just-
necessity. It could take 30 seconds to update somebody on something. You know, you could say, you know, Porter John's the second beach are all set. End of story.
Could be no change. Could be no change. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, exactly. Councilor Lombardo.
So given, so I'm not disagreeing. I think, this in concept is a good idea, and, we've already got the rule on the, and, you want to try to tweak that rule that we really, and honestly, kind of got out of hand at times when we just, as Councilor Von Villas puts it, it just went on and on and on and on. But given what Sean's got on his plate now, the budget, COVID, the state of emergency, and all the other things that are going on in this town right now, what I would like to see happen is that we don't implement this, and I'll give a date of maybe, let's just say September 1st. Get through the summer, get through the beach season, get through the budget, which is going to be huge. And then at some point, we'll come back, or we can set the date tonight. We need to get by this whole virus thing and this whole beach thing, and the budget is going to be huge for us. The budget's going to take us till the end of July. So we're not going to have time for updates. So let's push it out a little bit. Let's give Sean some room to breathe, and then we'll be able to get this thing rolling in September.
Good point, but I kind of tend to agree with Councilor Toronto on this a little bit, that we're not asking for a detailed update. Is that correct? That's what I'm getting out of it. This is just like, how is this going? Is there still a pulse? Is there still a heartbeat with that project? And I think you're right. I think a lot of times we lose sight of where some of these projects are. However, and I can understand what our town administrator has on his plate. I share some of that with him sometimes. And it's a lot of work. However, I think that's work, it would be tag you're it to my department heads. Give me an update on this stuff so I can present it to the council. So I'm kind of both ways with this. Any other conversation? Council Flynn?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Mr. President. So I do agree with both councilors, Toronto and Lombardi. Time is very limited. We are just clawing our way out of a very, bizarre lifestyle that we've all adopted. And I think the budget's critical because from a serving the public standpoint, I think that if it can simply get put on the website for counselors and the public to access, we would save time in the meetings if counselors identify one that they want more details on and then make it a docket item. But of course, that will probably take hiring someone to do the input and to make sure it stays up to date. So I'm also thinking or proposing we see how the budget is and if we can get a project update piece to get it out there for everybody, not just the counselors or a presentation at council meetings, because a lot of people don't or can't access council meetings. If it's on the website, they have a place to go. And then everybody can see it and everybody's up to date and it saves everybody time, including, here in chambers, Councilor Ron Villas. Just a thought.
Any other comments?
No, I'll keep my thoughts to myself at the present time.
All right. We have a motion that's been seconded. I seconded the motion. To get an update once a month. I think that's fair. Take no more than 15 minutes, consolidated update. I think that's more than fair myself. Council Sanders,
So we'll turn it to 15 minutes and no more,
that's the motion.
okay?
That includes questions.
I'm sorry?
That includes questions,
That's right.
Whether we're done or not.
whether we're done or not,
Thank you.
because that's what's keeping it going.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
And I would encourage no questions. I mean, this is not this is just to get an update. If
I
you
think a
want
lot of them
questions-
don't require nothing more than Mr. Brown saying to us, okay, we're in phase 2, here we are. We finished this project, we start this. I think it can be a lot faster. We have a tendency, and I say we, to drag this out. Okay?
So part of the motion is, I think, was prioritized by the council. How do we do that? That was part of the motion, right? We can't lose sight of that. If we're gonna, you're gonna make a motion and all of a sudden it's gonna be, well, what's the priority? I don't know if we should set the priority. Maybe we should. If that's what your motion is, and that's what it is. I mean, I'm fine with the 15 minutes. I'm fine with the update, but don't forget what was actually said in the motion. It's prioritized by the council. That's what part of that motion, and I'm not sure that should be in there or not.
Well,
I mean,
I guess there's a couple ways to look at that, and I can understand your point on that. But at the same token, there are updates that a lot of us don't care about. They're not high on our radar. They're not a priority. And I think by a mere email to the town administrator and say, hey, listen, for next month, I would like to see an update on this.
Okay.
I think if we all did that, Mr. Brown would be able to narrow in on what he needs and how to answer it. I think it'd be
I'm
easy.
fine with that. It's a good
think
idea.
it'd
I
be-
just
I
want to
think
make
it'd
sure
be
we're
easier.
clear on that.
Because they're only going to do it once a month.
Right. So when
Once
it
a
comes
month.
in, the list is established.
Yep.
We can send what they believe should
The
be on
clerk can
list.
put a very competent list together with the
But that
deputy
list will-
clerk and
That list
put a
remains in
back number
place.
together for us.
But that list would, excuse me, Mr. President, that list would stay in place. I mean, we wouldn't have to the next month submit them all again.
Right, right. I mean, if we take the top 2 or 3 and he addresses them, then whatever we didn't address will be the next month. We can get it up there. I think that's fair.
Mr. President,
Yes.
would this also include any state projects, or are we just talking town?
Any project going on in town.
No, why should he be responsible to us on state projects? He has no control.
but he's aware of it.
True.
He's our ambassador. He's the one that
Okay.
is privy to the information that we all don't know.
Well,
I mean, Mr. Brown sends a lot of information out to all of us, okay? And gives us updates on projects that are going on. But, you know, a DOT project, he can't tell you when they're gonna put a shovel in the ground. He can say, hey, the last I heard, this is what's happening. Very simple. Vice President.
or in the middle of the project, Mrs. S, that, hey, you know what? You know, like Green End and Aquidneck, well, the sidewalks on Aquidneck, here's where we're at with that, once it does
Right.
get going.
But will he be
Update.
aware of that?
Oh, sure he will.
Okay. I'll shut up.
They don't go to him, they don't go to anybody.
All right.
All right. So if anybody can remember all that, we got a motion out there. It's been second. I think with a lot of amendments to it. But anyways, I think we all get the gist of what we're trying to do here. You know, a simple, is there a pulse on this project? Is there not a pulse on this project? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Okay, the
Well,
next
thank
one
you.
is memorandum of Councilor Flynn with enclosures parking.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
I have a motion second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this is on the docket because there were 3 correspondences regarding parking in town. A couple came to the entire council, one was texted to me. I'll go through the details because the specifics, you have seen 2 out of 3 of them as they went to council emails or in a mailed letter. But they didn't get in the docket because there was personal private information on the correspondences. So in mid-May, you might recall a resident actually wrote to the council about having requested a no parking sign be placed on their street and how other no parking signs existed on the opposite side of the street and they were being disobeyed or ignored. And the resident was told that to get a parking sign on his side of the street would require an ordinance request, which the resident was inquiring about the complexity of such a simple thing to him. A week or so later, another resident in an email suggested putting parking signs up on Tuckerman Avenue since the beachgoers were all parking along Tuckerman. And then at the beginning of June, a resident texted me about beach parking sales at the restaurants in the Atlantic Beach District and forwarded that to our town administrator, who reported that the building official and the solicitor found that that type of beach parking sales does violate an ordinance. And though the activity had been practiced for years, if not decades. So the 3 parking issues so close together, found me wanting to make some inquiries on the docket and take the council's time so that the residents could get additional information about parking. So the cover memo, which is in the docket, asked for some information from Mr. Brown, parking sign placement determination and process, Middletown parking ordinances and enforcement, including the ordinance application that the resident was informed of, any Rhode Island general law regarding parking or parking signs applicable to Middletown, and any additional relevant information. Now on Tuesday, that would have been last week, or the week before our last meeting, because this is a continuation, Mr. Brown did send an update to the council on all 3 issues mentioned. It referenced Title VII of the Middletown Code of Ordinances, which they address the general parking rules, but not the mechanisms of how park signage is determined. So as the 3 issues came up, it seemed valuable if the town administrator could let the council and the public know when a parking issue comes up, what goes on from the town hall perspective. And so that's what I would request Mr. Brown to address now in sort of general terms as these issues have come up recently.
So generally, as the parking issues come up, the police department, Public Works will go out, review the matter. As we look at the signs, signage is placed in town in accordance with the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices from the Federal Highway Association. We typically, once we identify a plan to place the signs, we'll review that with the police department to ensure that they will actually enforce the ordinance. They feel that they are able to enforce it. and then the signs are implemented. If an ordinance is required or additional language is required, we'd work with the solicitor and the town clerk to put together an ordinance for the council to approve. But that's essentially it. As complaints come in at town hall, they generally seem to come in through the police department and ultimately work their way back to my office. A lot of times what I see is that residents will write a letter to the police chief, and they mostly end up back at town hall because they do require an ordinance if there's a change. But that's essentially the process. I think the two instances in these emails, Vaucluse, the area in Vaucluse, that was an area where there was actually an ordinance prohibiting parking. Parking became an issue because we had roped off the Kingfisher right away where there's 4 parking spaces because of control that we had put in place because of COVID. And people started to park up in Vaucluse. Public Works put up some temporary signs, and I think last week or the week before put up some permanent signs that should have been placed there prior. So that's been addressed. And similar to that is parking up at the Tuckerman Purgatory Chasm. Again, there was an inadequate number of signs. There was already a no parking ordinance. Police Department and Public Works met up there. Temporary signs were put in place until a final parking plan was identified, and those signs have been added to the area. So that's how we address the parking. I don't know about the form. I actually had skimmed the letter and didn't see anything about a special form for asking for signs. So I'm not, unless the clerk has a form, I'm not familiar with the form. Most of these requests come through in a form of a letter to my office or the police chief or the town council president. And I think that's parking. Just one thing we did complete, which I think helps. Wendy and I went through, parking ordinance had been managed on note cards from forever. We did codify those and added those to the town charter so that they're searchable and online for people. And that's made it a lot clearer, I think, to residents as well as the departments, and has made it easier for Public Works to maintain the signs that need to be placed in the neighborhoods. So there has been some regulatory cleanup in that regard.
Council Flynn, does that answer your question?
Very informative. I think that'll help everybody out.
Good.
Mr. President,
Council Lombardi?
one point, Sean. You know, in my former life, I dealt with these parking issues every day, 24/7. And one thing that I have a pet peeve about are signs. And everybody wants a sign, but nobody wants it in front of their house because they're unsightly. And you don't want one on every pole, and you don't want poles being stuck in front of everybody's house. And I think these ordinances certainly suffice that I think we have probably a policy, I know we did in Newport, that, you know, one sign on a block, and there's an ordinance to go with it, suffices for the block. I think the people that complain about parking expect enforcement when they have the issue come up. But to just stop plunking signs down, and I know we have an ordinance, and I get it, but to put them everywhere and to, you know, it's just like, just stop and let's enforce it. And I know our police department does a good job of enforcement. That's not what I'm talking about. But in the neighborhoods like yours, Terry, and yours, Dennis, and you know, where I live, I don't want to see signs all over the place. It just takes away from the atmosphere in the neighborhoods. You know, I think the best policy is a good enforcement policy, and when people call, that we're responsive to it, and that we enforce the ordinance as they're written. That's all I got to say about that.
Yep. And this council's familiar. We've talked about doing sign diets in different areas, and it's in my memo that you have from tonight. Specifically, I write, we try to clean up signage where we are doing projects replacing signs. We are implementing a sign diet in areas that are oversigned. It is part of what we do. And it's, quite frankly, there's two parts that I hate about signs. They cost a lot of money. And the second thing I hate is signs on crooked poles. It drives me absolutely bananas. So one way to address that is just not to have as many poles out there. So I agree with that. And on these no parking signs, the basic town methodology is when you come onto the road, there's a sign as you enter a roadway, no parking. There would be the same thing on the opposite end. And we've tried to reduce, the number of signs in the middle. If there's a nuisance, area or something where we do need to add additional pole is try to put it on the telephone pole facing the outward. So when you're parking the car, you see it when you're getting out of your car, but you don't necessarily see it coming down the road. A good example of that is at Second Beach. And actually I picked up on this. I had been out on the Cape a couple of years ago. All of our no parking signs on Satchers Point Road all face traffic as you were driving towards it. And then when I was out on the Cape, I noticed all of theirs face the roadway itself. So you only see it when you're pulling off to the side. But visually, when you're driving, it's aesthetically, it's more pleasing. So I agree with you entirely. And if the DPW staff was here, they know the sign diet is part of what they're responsible for.
Thank you. Council Vice President.
So I agree with that. You just got to be careful because sometimes there's unintended consequences. And we saw this happen a few years ago. I think everyone was on the council, maybe except for Councilor Flynn at the time. It happened up off of Ashurst or Kent Street or Kent Road. And I specifically remember the Del Rosses. It was, when families moved in these short driveways and all of a sudden you have kids and you like one or two cars would fit in the driveway and there's no parking signs. Well, guess what happened? When they started enforcing I'm not saying not to enforce it, the police department did their job. However, you start ticketing residents who have small families that grew over time, and the driveway would only hold one car or two cars. Next thing you know, there's 3, 4, 5 cars in a family, and those people are getting tickets for living there. So I agree with it. We just need to be careful because sometimes there are unintended consequences that arise out of this.
Thank you. Councilor Singh.
Thank you, sir. Past years, people were using the Paradise parking lot to park there and walk down to the beach. I haven't checked it lately. I did not check it this weekend. There were a number of cars that would park there. They wouldn't pay anything and they'd pick up their bags and chairs and walk down to the beach. The other thing I would like to have Mr. Brown clarify to me, the town does not own Purgatory Chasm parking lot. Am I correct?
Correct. That belongs to
We
the
have no
state.
I'm sorry?
That belongs to the state.
We have no jurisdiction over that parking lot.
We have a handshake. So parking is restricted to 30 minutes and we do enforce that.
But, Mr. Brown, the people who use that parking lot, I've seen them walk down to Surfers Inn. They're down there more than 30 minutes.
And they would receive a ticket. We issued over close to 50 tickets last weekend.
We did.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Trump.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Santos, thank you. Councilwoman Santos, thank you for mentioning that because that Purgatory Chasm area is a mob scene. They're parking everywhere over there. And the other day I was there, a car was in the ditch on the right because if you pull a little too far to the right as you're going down Tuckerman, you're in a ditch and you're going to have to get towed out of this. And that whole parking lot up there, maybe you got to talk to the state about this, but all the logs that are there are hanging, they're like falling over. I mean, it's like there's nothing being taken care of there, and Sean said we passed out a lot of tickets. I saw a gentleman there and he was walking to the beach and I said, it's 30 minutes, they're going to ticket you here. He says, how much? I don't know. He says, I'll eat the ticket. I'm going to the beach. So they're looking at it that way as well.
They can tell that. They can tell out of there too.
Yeah.
They could tow their cars out of it.
So I didn't know, I love how we put that railing up with the wooden railings and, makes it look really nice, in other different parts of the town. I didn't know if we could do something at Purgatory because we don't want them parking on the sides and they're big ruts on both sides. Should we put maybe wooden railings that are in there so they just can't park there?
That's not our parking lot. That's
No,
a
on the
state.
outside, not in the parking lot, but leading up to it, on the road, on Tuckerman. Because there's a whole, we put like 30, or let's just say 20 cones up there with no parking signs on them to block where they would park along Tuckerman Ave. I hate to see 15 signs go in there, maybe one sign, but there's trenches on both sides. So I don't know if we want to maybe have a guardrail there, a nice wooden one or something that would prevent them from parking there on the side of the road. Just an option. I'm good either way.
Something to look into. Council Flynn.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So Council Lombardi also, yes, on the number of signs in this town, Newport, Middletown, this whole area. It is really ugly. And you remember that song in the 70s, Signs, right? So
There's your sign.
let's not break out in song. So I'm think I'm going to kind of put out a public plea to engage the community to help us with the enforcement issue. Because I agree, signs are, like, as the resident wrote in and said, they're ignored. They do what people are going to do what they want. So on our website, middletownri.com, there is a little blue oval with a white question mark in it in the lower right screen. And that's a help button. And parking violations or questions can be written in. You can send pictures on that function and it goes right to, I believe, town hall admin, and then gets routed to the police department, and it's logged. So there can be some sort of follow-up and tracking of where are we having problems in town. If I understand the system correctly, it's Zendesk. Is that still the case, Mr. Brown?
It is. Yes.
So I would encourage anybody who's watching, share the word that we do have this function and we can get a handle on parking if we work together. We just need a little bit of help from everybody out on the streets. Thank you.
I agree that with consistent enforcement. Consistent, fair enforcement. Okay, good point. Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Okay, at my request, discussion and approval of the summer schedule. I'd like to propose the following. Tentatively, we had a budget review meeting coming up this Saturday, the 27th. I'm going to say, as part of this, I'm going to suggest that be canceled. Okay? Because it looks like you're just about going to get your documentation perhaps the day before, which isn't really fair. I'd like to establish a regular meeting and two budget meetings in July. July the 6th, which is a regular meeting, July the 20th, and July the 27th. Mr. Brown, I think that would give us enough time to establish the budget, to approve the budget, and to have the two public hearings, which would give you about 4 days wiggle room to get it all done by the end of July, correct? If we went with July 6th, the 20 and 27th.
The budget hearings would be on the 20th and 27th?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Does that fit in?
I believe so.
That
yes.
way, we'll have it done. It'll be done in an appropriate amount of time. Councilor Toronto can get his request vetted at that time. We can wrap this all up, establish the budget formally on the 27th, and then it'll be sent in. Does anybody have any issues with those dates? Now, I'll go over them again. There's July the 6th, which is a Monday.
It's a regular meeting.
Yes.
Okay,
July 20th, which is a regular meeting date.
okay.
And it'd also be the 27th, which will be a special meeting to finalize the budget,
All right, thank you.
okay? And also part of this, the summer schedule, I propose that we have one meeting in August, which would be August 17th. So
Discussion.
Vice President.
So on the meeting in July 6th, that first Monday, um, what are your thoughts on starting a budget at 6 o'clock or 5:30?
Absolutely.
So we can get an hour in.
We started
Maybe
before that.
maybe we hear the school, maybe we hear somebody that way,
Great idea.
you know?
5 o'clock? I'll go.
I don't, 5's tough. I don't know. I mean, if I can make it work.
Can anybody do 5? No? At night?
That's just a very long time. 5 to 10:30?
If we go to 10.
We get a couple more hours together.
Hit them, Barbara.
The problem is, we all know this is a busy time of the year. In other years, we've, had long weekend days doing this,
It's,
full days.
this whole thing's an anomaly as far as the
Yeah.
timing of it. and-
COVID.
But whatever you want to do, it
But
doesn't,
this puts
either
us,
way.
this puts us on a schedule, it puts us back on track, it puts us where we should be. So why don't we plan on that? Why don't we plan on July 6th, we'll start the meeting at 5 o'clock. And if anybody is late, they're late, but we'll start it at 5 o'clock and we'll try to get going on it. And then we'll go with July the 20th,
That's a budget hearing.
right?
Okay.
Okay,
What time?
let's go with 6 o'clock. We'll do
All
5, want to do 6 on the 20th, and we'll do 6 on the 27th. 5, 6, 6. Sound good? And then we'll go back into our regular meeting, one meeting in August, on August 17th.
Question.
Vice President.
Those are just budget hearings. They're not public hearings on the budget, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
The public hearings would follow?
the 20th and the 27th.
That isn't what he's saying, though.
So
Oh.
don't we typically sit and talk about the budget
The
like
20th,
we
the
did it
6th?
Saturday?
The 6th,
So you're rolling it all into one, budget discussion and public hearing at the same time?
no,
No,
the public hearings would be the 20th and the 27th. Because at the end of the second budget hearing,
Okay,
public
so when
hearing,
is the
we
budget
can-
discussion?
the 6th.
the 6th.
So in 2 hours, we're going to talk about the whole budget.
Or doing the public hearing, or during the public hearing.
That's what I'm asking. There's no
We can
way
do it.
we can talk
We
to
can
the
do it,
school.
no, we can do it during the public hearings as well.
I don't,
Mr. Brown, you want to comment?
No, you're doing a great job at it.
He nodded off. He nodded off.
I mean, I'll do it whatever way you
No,
want.
I didn't.
We just always had 2 separate public hearings,
We do. But we can
just to
also
listen
talk-
to the residents.
But we can also talk about, we could talk about that prior to the public hearings. We could break the budget down and talk about it prior to it and be part of the budget. I'm just trying to put this in so we fall in line with the established budget by July 31st.
Okay.
I mean, I think we can do it. And if you know something, if on July 6th, we find that we can't do it, maybe we'll throw another special meeting in there.
Okay.
That only takes 48 hours.
Okay.
We could throw that in there. We'll just play it by ear. Any other conversation about that?
We will all be notified by our town clerk.
Madam Clerk will send you out a slip.
Thank you.
She'll say, Mrs. Santos, be here this time.
No, she's gonna list for everybody. not
Okay.
just me.
All right. Madam Clerk, did you get that? We're going to do 5 o'clock here on the 6th.
Yes.
We're going to do 6 o'clock here on the 20th. And we're going to do 6 o'clock on the 27th. And if for some reason, to make sure that we're in line with establishing our budget by the 31st, if we need to, we'll throw in a special meeting sometime in there. And then we're going to go with one meeting in August.
Perfect.
Okay?
Perfect.
Sound good?
Sure.
We'll give it a try.
Sure.
All right? All right. So I'll make that my motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. The next item, which was put in as an addendum from myself and the vice president, we're requesting a forensic and asset audit be done
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
We have motion and second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Uh, I believe, and the vice president believes, that this is appropriate. We've charged our town administrator with taking over certain departments to consolidate them with his departments. So we're asking that those departments that we're going to assume responsibility for, that we do audits on, a forensic audit and an asset audit. So we know when we take it over, what we're getting is what we're getting. I think it's the appropriate thing to do. I think it's certainly the clean way to do it. And I think in the process of doing it, we're going to know exactly what we're assuming responsibility of and for. I mean, in all honesty, do we really know what the assets are? No, but we will, that we're assuming responsibility for. Council Flynn.
Just some questions. I'm not
Go
in,
ahead.
I'm not in disagreement. I just
Go
have
ahead.
some questions about this topic.
Go ahead.
So one question, the consolidation report that we got a couple of times, I tried to do a search for the word audit, but it didn't work in the PDF form. I didn't know if they addressed it at all, this part of doing a consolidation. Did they address that at all? Do we know?
I don't believe it was.
Oh, okay. I just.
I believe there was conversation that I was involved in. Initially, when we talked with the school administration, the chair of the school committee, myself and Mr. Brown,
Okay.
that the word audit came up because, I mean, naturally, do you want to assume somebody's books and assets without really having it audited by an impartial group? I don't want to. I don't think we should. Nor do I think it's fair to Mr. Brown and his team.
Again, not disagreeing, just
no.
asking the questions. So is this something that we have a price for? Is it an RFP type of
That's the
action?
next part. That's the next motion.
Okay. And,
Okay? So
and-
once we receive it, this is the reason why. Now,
oh, wait, one more question,
okay,
please.
go ahead.
So the school department gets audited just like the town hall gets audited. Can we not use their audit, which is public record?
It's a financial audit, which is
a big
different than a forensic or at,
big difference.
a business
Big difference.
valuation. I think that's pretty much.
Go ahead.
Yes, I was talking with Bob about this because I think I look at it like, any business that you hate to use the word acquire, but we are taking over certain responsibilities and I think it's important that it's clean. I think, as Bob stated, we know exactly what we're getting. And we know exactly what the assets are. So we know from the get-go, and it's not a shot. I want to make this clear. It's not a shot at the school. We haven't had the best relationship over the past couple of years with the school department or school committee. It's not what it's about. It's clearly about business and making sure that we start fresh, we start clean, we know exactly what we have, whether it's financial or whether it's assets. You wouldn't acquire a business without just saying, okay, I'll take everything you got now and not knowing what you're getting or what you have. You might have an idea, but I think it's the right and clean way to do it. That's all this is about.
It's an acquisition.
Thank you.
Council Santos.
I would like to just add one word in your memo here.
Go right ahead.
All in where you say asset audits, I would like to add all asset audits,
Okay, we can do that.
all right?
We can do that.
There is a reason for that,
Okay,
and we should be well aware that we get all of them.
okay.
We get everything.
All right, do you have a motion?
Yes, motion to initiate an RFQ for the forensic and asset audit, all asset audits of the school departments which will be consolidated with the town.
Second,
Okay, the motion's been seconded. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, 6B in my rewritten note here. Resolution of the council extending the FY 2021 budget for 30 days per section 208 of the town charter and authorizing expenditures by the town departments and agencies not to exceed the rate of expenditures for the comparable month of the preceding year.
Motion to pass said resolution.
second,
Motion second. Any
Discussion.
conversation?
Yes. I'd like a little clarification on, in authorizing expenditures by town departments and agencies not to exceed the rate expenditures of the comparable month of the preceding year. And I understand what that means, but I'm not sure you can compare it to last year at this time.
It won't exceed the budget, basically.
I understand that, but the timing of certain things expenditures are in different months. So I want to make
Mr.
sure
Brown?
we're clear on, I got to tell you, because I know that we put a spending freeze on. I hope we would continue that same spending freeze until we know exactly where we're at. Because to me, this is comparable to last year at this time, and you can't compare last year to this year. So I just want to make sure it's
Okay,
clear.
good point. Mr. Solicitor?
Mr. President, that language comes directly out of the town charter, and that is the provision that authorizes the council to pass this continuing spending resolution until we're in a position to finalize the budget. So that language comes directly out of there. It just sets the ceiling, certainly doesn't set the floor. As you mentioned, there is a spending freeze in place in the current situation, but that language comes directly out of the charter that authorizes this sort of action.
But Sean, is that spending freeze continuing? I guess that's probably a more appropriate question.
It will continue, yes.
Okay.
I need to issue another memo for the new fiscal year, but with this action tonight, it will be extremely clear to everybody that because I will have other things that,
But do you see what I'm saying? It's just, I want to make sure that
oh, yes.
we're
No,
comparing it to last year. We really can't do that. I just want to make sure our practices for the last 3 months stay in place until we adopt the budget.
Correct.
Okay.
Good point. Okay, excellent. All right,
We're going to motion in a second.
motion. in
We
second.
already have a motion in a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Memorandum of the tax assessor and finance director with enclosures, collector abatements, cancellation of taxes for certain Middletown residents.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
And motion second to receive, all in favor?
Aye.
Any conversation? Okay. Resolution of the council, collector abatements, collection of taxes for certain Middletown residents.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Cancellation of taxes, I'm sorry,
Sorry.
Middletown residents.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second?
We have motion second. Any conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Memorandum of the tax assessor with enclosures, cancellation of taxes for certain Middletown residents.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
A motion is second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution of the council, collector abatements, cancellation of taxes for certain Middletown residents.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Second?
A motion is second to pass. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Memorandum of the finance director to the town administrator with enclosures, FY 2021, FY 2022 Regional Animal Shelter Agreement, Private Party League for Animals.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
Have a motion is second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution of the council, FY 2021, FY 2022 Regional Animal Shelter Agreement, Private Party League for Animals.
Motion to pass said resolution.
Have a
Second?
motion is second to pass. Any conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Memorandum of the town administrator with enclosures RE Par Road Safety Studies for Paradise Avenue, Turner Road, and Green End Avenue.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second?
A motion is second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Memorandum of the finance director to the town administrator with enclosures.
Comment?
JF
Excuse me,
Hang on.
Mr. President. There's a presentation for the Turner Road, Paradise Avenue, and Green End Avenue.
Okay, do you want to walk us through that, Mr. Brown, or is there somebody going to walk us through it?
Yep, we have the
There's
engineer and Warren Hall online.
Okay. Mr. Hall, good evening. Mr. Hall?
Mr. President?
Okay, we're ready for your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully everybody can hear me all right. For the record, Mr. President, Warren Hall, Town Engineer. This is the Town of Middletown's roadway safety evaluations. Tonight, we'll be talking about Paradise Avenue, Green End Avenue from Antonome to Bliss Mine Road, and Turner Road. Previous projects that we've presented to the council include Third Beach Road and the other portion of Green End Avenue from Indian Ave to Antonome. We've had public informational meetings, we've conducted surveys, and these projects have been evaluated by a team. That team consisted of the Public Works Director, Tom O'Loughlin, Middletown Police Chief Bill Cure, Middletown Police Captain Mike Faria, Middletown Police Captain Jay Ryan, Middletown Police Officer Ben Coster, Middletown Interim Fire Chief Rob McCall, Park Corporation Professional Traffic Engineer Bobby Sykes, who's also on the line tonight. And also included where we needed him was Dave Fonts, the Director of Facilities for the Middletown School Department. So with that being said, I can switch over to the next slide, please. And these are the three items that we talk about this evening. The first is Paradise Avenue. The second is a Green End Avenue from Antonome Ave to Boulevard. This portion of Green End Avenue was discussed earlier, and the residents thought they would have liked some more input or more looking into that section of the road by us. So we hosted a public informational meeting and have recommendations for that portion of Green End Avenue also. And then thirdly is Turner Road. Next slide, please. This is the Paradise Avenue recommendations for the improvements. Let me just start that over. Public informational meeting was held on June 4th, 2019. From that meeting, we compiled a survey that was sent out to all of the properties along Paradise Avenue. We received those back. We evaluated those answers to the questions. And if I could share those questions with the council. There were 4 questions. The first question to the Paradise Avenue folks were, 1, are you in favor of having 2 speed back signs installed on Paradise Avenue? 2, are you in favor of having 2 speed tables installed on Paradise Avenue? 3, are you in favor of phasing in traffic calming solutions, beginning with 2 feedback signs and assessing whether slows traffic down before deciding if additional improvements such as speed tables are necessary? 4, are you in favor of the town covering the drainage ditches along the eastern side of Paradise and creating pathways along the shoulder of the road so that pedestrians have a safe way to walk along the roadway? The questionnaires were all answered, I'll say, in the affirmative. So everybody, excuse me, let me get my results here. So the results of question number 1, 62% of those responded strongly agreed with the feedback signs. Question number 2, 69% agreed with having the 2 speed tables installed. 44% were against the phasing in of the speed tables and the speed feedback signs. And 63% were in favor of filling in the ditch and adding a walkway. So that was the survey. We also presented these drawings and recommendations to the Scenic Roadway Board, eventually receiving approval from the Scenic Roadway Board for the recommendations that are in front of you tonight. And we have our final recommendations as follows. Install the 2 speed tables with signage and striping. Install 2 solar-powered speed feedback signs. Realign the intersection at Green End Ave, remove pavement, add striping and bicycle sharrows, regrade areas of standing water. Portion of this work has been approved as part of the Green End Ave study. Realign the intersection at Purgatory and Tuckerman, remove pavement, add crosswalk, signage and striping, and remove the signage opposite Bailey Avenue for the bus stop and speed limit sign south of Prospect Avenue. Next slide, please. Mr. Chairman? Mr. President?
Yes,
Oh,
boy.
boy. Can you still hear me okay?
We can hear you fine.
Thank you. The next slide, I can't see the slide, but I believe that should be the Paradise Avenue drawing.
It is.
Okay. So that details the signage and the improvements that we'd like to propose along Paradise Ave. Next slide, please. Green End Avenue from Antonomy Ave to Boulevard. So this was the area that we went back, we reevaluated and held another public informational meeting and came up with 2 additional recommendations. Install solar-powered speed feedback signs and complete the skip striping at the intersection of Bliss Mine and the Boulevard. Next slide, please. This shows the general location of the speed feedback signs and the skip markings along Bliss Mine Road into Green End. Next slide, please. Turner Road. We held a public informational meeting and our final recommendations at this point are to realign the intersection at East Main Road where we would remove pavement, add signage and striping. This work will require a DOT permit and we would ask for approval to submit those plans to the DOT. The second is to restrict traffic to no through trucks over 13 tons. So this is similar to what we have over on Forest Avenue. In addition to this, the police chief has gone over and spoke to National Grid and asked them to use the main road and Wyatt Road rather than cutting through Turner down to Green End. The next recommendation is to install 2 speed tables with the signage. One of the speed tables would be installed at the Gaudet School. That would be a raised crosswalk. Then we would have 2 solar-powered speed feedback signs, one in the vicinity of Hugendon Nurseries and the other, both of them in the vicinity of Hugendon's Nurseries, I'm sorry. We would add signage and bicycle sharrows along the pavement. In addition to this project, we've also installed a guardrail along Turner Road at Green End. That happened last week. And our sidewalk project has begun today. Next slide, please. And that shows the improvements along Turner Road. And I would open it up to questions and just remember that Bobby Sykes is on the line if there are any technical questions that I cannot answer. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Warren, thank you very much. And thank you for the presentation. It was informative. I just have one quick question. I know there's counselors that want to ask some questions, but are we going to impede any kind of commercial business with that weight restriction on Turner Road? I'm thinking about the nursery that's there, for an example.
I would probably ask Sean about that, but I don't think so, because we're gonna allow, if you have business on Turner Road, to come in and go about your businesses. There are a number of businesses there. We have the nurseries, Shav's Oil is there. The intention is not to limit those businesses. It's to discourage through traffic.
I think we would use similar language that we did on Forest Avenue, which would exclude, the traffic for the businesses that are located on the road, the agriculture use, the school buses. I would review that with the solicitor, but I think similar language with the weight restriction would allow business to continue.
Okay, my concern definitely would be, I don't want to,
Yeah, we just
obstruct
we'd be
anybody's
targeting
business
the
on that
commercial
road.
vehicles that are using it as a cut through, not the commercial vehicles that actually have business on that street.
okay. Council Lombardi.
Warren, thank you for the presentation and the work you put in so far. Just two things that pop into my mind right now regarding both Paradise Avenue and Turner Road. The speed tables, I don't want to see the kind of speed tables that we got on Forest Avenue that absolutely do nothing. It was a waste of asphalt. What we have on Chase's Lane have been extremely effective during the school year with kids out there walking to the bus stops and that through traffic going to Newark. It's been effective. And those speed tables are very noticeable there. I really want you to kind of please, when you guys plan this out on both of those roads, to put something that's similar. The other thing that I want to know is, because this is a conversation that we've been having since we had that tragedy on West Main Road, and that's bicycle safety. Are we going to implement or incorporate some type of, I know there are pedestrian signs, but bicycle safety signage and the like on these projects?
Yes, there are sharrows that'll be shown on Turner Road, and I believe we're gonna have one Paradise. Maybe Bobby Sykes can answer that. Let me.
Sure. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. This is Bob Sykes with Park Corporation. Yes, there are sharrows and share the road signage for bicycle traffic on all the project roads.
Very good. Thank you very much. All of you, you've done a great job on this.
Vice President.
Warren, thank you. And thank you, Power Engineering. So I had some of the similar concerns about Turner Road. I know we've seen a lot of recent emails there, especially on the end of Green End. So it looks like that's been addressed. But as far as the speed, I agree with Rick. I hope there's something that's put there that is effective. As far as Paradise Avenue goes, Warren, I have a question. You mentioned one of the questions was filling in the gutters and providing some type of sidewalk or walkway on Paradise. And what was the resolution to that?
The resolution was 63% agreed with that proposal and 30% disagreed and 6% didn't vote.
Okay.
So they were basically in favor of it, and that in favor of that question, but that came about as part of the public informational meeting, that there were a lot of folks that were for it, some folks were against it. So we put it as part of the survey.
Well, the reason I asked that question is because, I go down that way when I leave my house and go to the farm on Green End at my mom's, and I see a lot. I've never seen so much pedestrian traffic, bicycle traffic, joggers. I've never seen this amount of activity. Now, I understand that you know, a lot of people were getting out during the pandemic to walk because they couldn't really go anywhere else or do anything else. But this isn't just this year. A lot of people use that. It can be a speedway to the beach during the beach season. So I think it's important that something is done there with those gutters. Those gutters are extremely deep. And I know that, so I think it's important the town, I know it's going to be costly, but maybe we can do it in phases once we get on our financial feet again and take a look at prioritizing projects. Somebody's going to get hurt there with the amount of traffic and activity that's going on Paradise Avenue. And not only that, but I think the town really needs to look, the council needs to look at the town policy. Town policy, when I worked at Public Works in the mid-'80s to the early '90s, was, at the time, if you were a resident and you purchased and you wanted your gutter filled in front of your house, and you purchased the pipe and the materials, the town would put it in when they could. I believe that policy, and Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, has been reversed, where the town will buy the material, but you'll pay for the labor. And that becomes too expensive at times. And it depends upon your frontage, I'm sure, but it's something that maybe at least could be a start, that maybe there's not a sidewalk, but at least those gutters are filled in and people can walk or get out of the road. So that it's safer. So I think that's something we probably need to look at and address probably tonight, if we're going to move forward with this.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, hi, Mr. Hall. I have a quick question for you on your surveys that you were administering at the informational sessions. Am I right in that they were mostly yes or no questions?
They were strongly the answer options that everybody had for the questions: strongly disagree, neither. On the other side, it'd be agree and strongly agree.
Okay. So was there open conversation in these sessions as well? You know, brainstorming ideas, that kind of back and forth, or was it simply, this is, you know, these are the issues on these particular roads and what we're considering, we want your input on based on this survey?
It was both.
Okay.
It was both. We
Good,
made the
great.
present.
Okay, so I'll assume that the answer was both. Thank you very much. Because the council got a lot of emails on this, especially Turner Road. And, you know, it just came out 2 Wednesdays ago now, or week before. So I just want to make sure that some of the feedback that seemed to be not mainstream was embraced. And one of the issues that came up, talk about bicycle safety, was the sharrows. One of the residents actually did some research and said that officials seem to agree sharrows are not an acceptable stand-in for bike lanes. And that concerns me, when given, you know, the amount of use that these roads are getting and the recent accidents. So I don't know if there could still be considerations, but I don't know that I'm real happy with the uptick of bicycle use with the sharrow idea. And there were other suggestions as well, like adding a curb to the sidewalk on Turner Road, putting a small curbed island between the lanes at the end of Turner where it intersects Green End, adding stop signs on Green End. Again, I don't know if these were discussed, refuted, if they are still possible. I think that's kind of the questions that the residents were emailing. You know, what about all these ideas? Are they still on the table? Is this a done deal? Is there going to be a public presentation for a final, hey, everybody, this is, you know, what we can do, so that they can say, well, what about this and this? And then hear from pair with the answers. Again, that bike path along Green End and Paradise towards the beach, huge suggestion from the residents. Mailboxes, this one was great. Mailboxes that are currently in the center of the sidewalk, can they be moved to the edge of the property? And, you know, I know that it's delivered by mail truck, so I can see where that would be hard, but apparently they're quite a hazard for all of that foot bicycle traffic. Excuse me. And, you know, one resident actually emailed in and said, you know, we might want to put the study on hold and really consider some of these other ideas and what to do. Let's see. Another suggestion for the end of Turner for onto Green End is to restripe the line and move it east a few feet. So people are thinking about these issues and they're living down there. You know, I want to hear from the people who are boots on the ground there because they really know. And if these solutions will address the issues, great. But if not, I don't want to get into spending a lot of money and doing something and then do it wrong and have it not solve the problem. And of course, speeding is always a huge, huge issue. So, and back to Paradise, what about those wood rails that Councilor Toronto brought up earlier tonight? Are these things that can keep our residents safe and, you know, serve the purpose? And boy, signs. Councilor Lombardi, did you see the picture of the signs? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilor Santos.
Mr. Hall, thank you very much for the improvement at the end of Turner's Road. At least that gentleman, it was a great job. At least that those people living in those homes at the end of Turner's Road, will not have cars in their living room. Number two, are the sidewalks all completed from intersection of Wyatt to Green End Avenue?
The sidewalk from Wyatt to Green End Avenue.
Right, you were working on the upper end of Turner's Road, closer to the intersection, instead of coming all the way down to Green End Avenue.
Yes, so the new sidewalk will extend from Green End Avenue up to the Hugendon Nursery. There'll be a 6-inch curb, new 4-foot wide sidewalk, and we'll work with each one of the property owners to move the mailboxes and make the mailboxes as safe as we possibly can. Now, when the sidewalk gets to Hugendon's, it jogs to the east, so it moves away from the travel lane. There's a grass strip with trees, so we don't need to do anything with the sidewalk along that stretch. So I guess the answer to your question is yes. We've looked at the sidewalks and we consider those sidewalks to be safe.
My second part would be, I know Mrs. Ardito approached you regarding trimming the trees or bushes at the end of the intersection of Green End and Turner's Road. Was that done today?
It was not done today. It's part of this project, and that was one of the recommendations of the Green End Avenue study. So that will be implemented.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hall.
You're welcome.
Mr. President.
So Warren, you just mentioned on Turner Road, there would be from Green End almost up to some point before Hugendorn's a 6-inch curb. What type of 6-inch curb are you referring to, sir?
That's the asphalt lip berm.
That's why I asked. I wanted clarification because I know that's cheaper to do, but is it a Cape Cod type berm, or is it just one that kind of goes up like on High Street where a car can climb right up it instead of like a granite type curb?
Well, it's not a granite type curb, and it's not what we call a Cape Cod berm. It has a vertical face to it, similar to what we put on Antonome Avenue, King Road. We've used it in the past. And you're right, it is less expensive to install, but it does not allow the vehicles to mount that sidewalk. So that's what we refer to an unmountable curbing.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Hall, how's that hold up compared to cement or concrete curbing with snow plowing?
So the asphalt curb is not as strong as cement. It's not as strong as the concrete or the granite, but we found that it does hold up. We have it on my Antonomy Avenue. We have it on King Road, and it shows some signs of wear and tear, but I think it's a suitable curb for these areas. I do. Maybe Bobby Sykes wants to, if he has an opinion on that.
Sure. Yeah, it's a cost-effective alternative. It isn't mountable, like Warren said, so it has a similar physical feature as concrete and granite. But yes, it's much more cost-effective. As for the wear and tear, yeah, like Warren said, we do notice it doesn't last as long as the concrete or the granite, but it holds up decently.
Okay. Vice President.
So, Warren, do we know the cost difference between the asphalt curb you're referring to and, one that's going to last longer? Because I'd be more inclined to support one that it may cost more, but the longevity of it, long-term would be more financially solvent.
So off the top of my head, the Cape Cod berm is about $4 a foot. And the concrete curb or granite curb is in the range of, I'll say, $50 per foot. That's the range you're in here. So the asphalt lip berm is more expensive than a Cape Cod berm. So, and I don't have that number for a Cape Cod berm in front of me, Paul.
I just want to make sure we're not replacing it from snowplow damage in 10 years.
Warren, berm is about $2.50 a foot. Concrete curb is about $30 a foot, and granite's about $55 a foot.
Okay, I think you just answered my question.
So we'll make sure we keep our snow plows on the road, right? That's the curbs.
That was the berm. So yeah, the bituminous curb is a little bit more expensive than that. It'd probably be around $5 a foot, like Warren said.
Councilor Talano.
Thank you. I want to just second what Paul said in regards to the activity on Paradise. It is just right over the top. About 50 people getting out. That road's pretty fast on that road. It's ditch it hard. Dangerous. Probably something happened on that road. So I was kind of hoping that program that they would fill them in, like Paul said, maybe it's a curb, not sidewalks at first, but at least people can get off the road. Because right now, you're walking, you got to get off that road to fall in a ditch. I would like to second Paul.
I would just like to, Sean, I don't know if we can make this part of our 5-year capital plan, as far as the gutters on Paradise, because at points in time, the guardrail on the west side is so close to the road, and people walk. You're supposed to walk facing traffic, right? And ride. So, sometimes there's nowhere to go for those folks. Believe me.
So I do know in the capital improvement program, Public Works this year did put in a ditch abatement program. We targeted the ditches on.
Sean, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. There is a ditch abatement program that was in the original capital improvement program that Tom put together to address ditches on Paradise Avenue, Third Beach Road, and Browns Lane. Those were the 3 large areas with ditches on both sides of the road that are of concern for safety reasons. So I just can't remember how they shifted around based on adjusting for COVID, where resources were, but
Yeah.
it is under consideration.
Yeah, I mean, I would think, based on the amount of activity, if I had to prioritize, Paradise would be at the top of the list. It's almost like, because you have them, I think it's great we're doing the sidewalks from up Purgatory to the top of the hill at Second Beach. I think that's needed, but on this side here, you have as much activity coming down this way as well. So I think it needs to be looked at.
I agree.
I think we need to move on it and not talk about it. So I think maybe budget time, it's probably a good timing to see where this could fit in.
Mr. President,
Council Staples.
just to clarify something between everybody, I'd like to ask a question. We're talking about the ditches on Paradise Avenue. Are we talking about the ditches from Prospect headed south
I'm talking the whole way.
the whole way? But part of that is a brook that's going. What's going to happen to the brook?
That's the other side of the street.
What's going to happen to that?
Nothing. We're talking about the east side of the road.
The east side. All right. But people don't walk always on the east side. They walk on the other side, especially if they're parking in Paradise Park to go to the beach. With the
Good
kids.
point.
But they're supposed to walk on facing traffic, and that would be on the east side if they're heading down that way.
Mr. Paul, you tell the people that they're on the wrong side.
I know,
of the
but if you
road.
provide something for them there's nowhere to go. There's a gutter on one side and guardrail on the other. So where do you go?
Don't park on Paradise Park.
We're talking about Paradise Avenue.
I know, but they park on Paradise Park. Use Paradise.
I understand, but it's not just people that park there. The amount of bicyclists and pedestrians is, like Dennis said, it's over the top.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Memorandum of the Finance Director through the Town Administrator with
Excuse
the,
me, Mr. President.
yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Where do we go from here? I don't have an answer. I mean,
Budget.
okay,
Up at the budget time.
okay.
It's
I just
appropriate
want,
time.
so are we implementing these changes? Is that what we're doing?
I thought that was part of the memo. We're looking for approval to start working on this, on these 3 plans. The council has already approved the plan on Third Beach Road. So there's basically 4 plans pending, 3 plans pending out of the 4 that we've done.
Okay. I'll bring it up on budget time. Thank you.
Okay. Memorandum of the Finance Director to the Town Administrator with the closures are JFK lease, East Bay Community Action Program lease.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second,
A motion second to receive. Any conversation?
Just questions?
Council Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I looked at the map, Mr. Brown, and that's a great split of space. So the tenants would all be at one end of the building. And so I'm just curious if we're looking actively for other tenants, unless I'm misreading the map, or are we going to be doing any repairs on the building? Is this something that to be discussed?
I'm sorry, I'm just catching up. I was just
Yeah,
writing a note down.
that's fine.
So this is JFK?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, if there was going to be any financial needs, they'd be presented and it'd be part of a resolution, correct?
It would have to be part of the budget.
And part of a later resolution.
Yes.
Okay. And are we looking for tenants for the other half, or are we using that ourselves, the school or robotics, or, I'm looking at this picture right here.
Yeah. I think at this time, we've talked to New Visions or EBCAP. There has been no other interest expressed. We still have robotics team that are in the building. And I think we're still using it as some flex space for the lunch programs and things like that. I think the one issue that we've been working on internally, which we haven't discussed, is the town is still working with the MLK Center to provide upwards of 400 meals to residents. And internally we've been working because of a concern that while we're providing a mobile food pantry service right now to that area of town, that we will need some space indoors if the pandemic continues as predicted. So we would need to utilize some space, I think, at the JFK school in the late fall, early winter. So to answer your question, I mean, that's the other consideration that we've been looking at, that I think we can work with the Newport Community School, EBCAP, and use that flex space to deal, for any sort of food distribution point if we need to use that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Lombardi.
Yeah, so Sean, to that note, and I was going to send a memo into the council president, and I still plan on doing it. In speaking with people who are doing Meals on Wheels and who are doing food distribution, and the Martin Luther King Center is having a difficult time. I'm thinking that maybe, and again, I will bring this up formally, that we should be considering, based on the need that I'm hearing in the town of Middletown, we need to talk about a food bank, and we need to do something to supplement what's happening at the MLK Center, because they can't keep up. So I think maybe that would be for a while until we decide what we're going to do with that building, and we have space available. It's becoming a real need in this town. And again, I got that from pretty reliable source. I'll provide some documentation when the time comes.
Excellent. Good point. Absolutely. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to receive. All in favor?
Aye. Motion to extend the East Bay Community Action Program lease at the JFK School and authorize the town administrator to execute the lease.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 15, memorandum of the town administrator, beach food concession contract. Documentation to follow.
Motion to receive said memorandum.
Second.
A motion second to receive. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, and I'm going to ask for assistance from the solicitor, as he's had a number of the conversations with Jay Vending. Our current food vendor has requested a change to their contract. They are looking to change from the fixed dollar amount that they pay. This year, they would have paid a rent of $88,000 to use the concession stand. And because of COVID and the changes in the way that the beach operates, they're requesting to basically change so that they use a percentage of gross sales method to make a payment for use of the space. So it'd be 15, what they're proposing currently is 15% of the gross sales adjusted for sales and meals tax. The solicitor has been in touch with Jay Vending, and we've been able to secure some data from them. If we were to accept their proposal, that would reduce the amount of rent that we realize from the rental into a range of about $14,000 to $25,000 for the current season that we're in.
From 88,000.
From the 88,000. So that is the proposal that they brought forward, and I brought it forward to you this evening to discuss. Not sure, Peter, if you wanted to add
Mr.
anything.
Solicitor, I'm going to ask you, since you were part of negotiating with them, or having
Sure.
the initial discussion with them. I looked at this and I just thought it was kind of low. And I understand we don't have as many people down there now, but it's opening up. It's
And once again,
more
I
it's
wouldn't
opening up.
describe what we had as negotiations. We had some discussions. We did ask them to provide copies of their sales figures for the last 3 years, which were generally in the range, gross sales of about 230 to 235,000. At the contract rate, the town's rent was probably closer to between 30 and 35% of the gross sales. I think their position was the beach is opening late, there's fewer patrons, there's also a limited number of non-residents which they say they get most of their business from, since they don't believe that the residents buy as much. It's the people from out of town who are buying as much. So it's certainly something where the town can go back and suggest a higher percentage.
Would it be appropriate for us to put this out for a bid?
I don't think you would have time at this point.
Depends on how much time we gave them to put a bid in. I know there's a lot of local people that might jump on this being short term. You're coming into the prime time of summer. However, yes, there's a reduction in people patronizing the beach. We know that. But it's opening up on a continual basis. More people can be in an area now than ever before, and it looks like it's going to continue to increase. I don't know. It just seems like a big cut in what we're getting. Although I'd like to have something down there for the people going to the beach as well. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents. Anybody want to make it?
Sure.
Councilor Lombardi.
Peter, how many, what do we have, a year left on this contract with them?
This year and next, then it would go back out to bid.
I mean, you know, we've had this discussion, and, you know, when you talk about healthy choices and things that, you know, you have an opportunity to purchase at the beach. I mean, I tend to agree with Bob. Maybe we put something out to bid, and maybe local people will be willing to jump on, but given that we're not using all the parking space down there now, and I don't know if we will use it all this summer, maybe we open those bids up to I mean, we've talked about food trucks. They offer better choices and healthier choices in the long run, and it will give people more than just what you can get at the concession. It's a thought. We're going to let them allow them at the beach anyway if we approve the ordinance. And we're going to allow them to bid down the road. Just my thought.
Good point. Councilor Flick.
So, Mr. Regan, when you said we have them for this year and next year, are they on a multi-year agreement?
It's on a multi-year agreement. They were the successful bidder last time that this went out to bid. So we're not in a position, right? There is an existing contract that they are asking to renegotiate. So, and I don't know, we haven't had a discussion as to what they will do if
We turn down their offer.
if we turn this proposal down or make a counter proposal. So there is a contract in place right now. So we're not, as we sit here today, we're not in a position to put this out to bid because we do have an existing contract.
And how many years is the contract for? Is it
This is year 4 out of 5.
so it's a 5-year? Okay.
Yeah, so I think the main thing tonight, Mr. President, is this an offer that you're willing to entertain, or shall the solicitor and I go back and say, this is not something we're entertaining?
Personally, myself, I'm not willing to entertain it. I think we could do better in this. I think we could do better in this if we open it up to some of the food trucks, to let them go down there. Or maybe there's some other concession people in the area that would like to take it over. I just think it's low.
Mr. President, a couple more questions.
Go right ahead.
I wasn't done, I'm sorry.
Let us know.
Do we know if this discussion is happening in other beach communities with their food truck contracts and their beach concessions?
I don't know specifically, but I assume it is. I do know that this particular vendor, which handles a number of different sites, they do concessions at amusement parks and other locations, and that they're dealing with the same issue at multiple locations.
Yeah, I have no doubt that they're feeling the pinch like every other industry in this current economy. I'm not very comfortable with a percentage. I'd like a flat fee that we know we're getting. So those are my comments.
I
Thank
agree.
you.
Okay. Vice President.
I agree. I mean, right from the get-go, when I saw a percentage, I mean, how do you know what they're going to report? It's an anomaly year, so I'd rather have a flat fee or send it out. We legally can send this out. We don't need to accept this, right? Because they,
No, this is a proposal that they're making to the council that you are not required to accept.
Did they cancel their contract with us? Is that what happened?
They
Contract
requested.
has not been canceled.
Well, that's why I'm asking. If it hasn't been canceled, how can we put it out to somebody else?
That's what I'm saying. At this point, as we sit here today, there's a contract in place. And we need to get to some resolution as to whether or not they are going to be operating this year or not.
However, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Solicitor, they asked us to consider letting them out of the contract when the COVID-19 hit. Am I right, Mr. Brown?
No.
Okay.
They
then what
asked to
happened?
renegotiate the contract. They
They
didn't,
asked
they have
to
not asked to be
renegotiate.
released from it.
Okay. All right, so part of negotiations and renegotiations is their offer and our offer, correct?
Correct.
I mean, when I looked at this, I'm going to be frank. I said to myself, and I understand they're in a tight position, but we're in a tight position. And our taxpayers are going to be in a tight position. I mean, if I look at this, I personally would say, give us half of the original contract. It was 44,000 out of the 88K. That's just my feeling. Go ahead.
I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. It says this would reduce revenue downward to a range of 14 to 25,000. So that's from the 88,
No, that is.
or is that,
Well, that's correct. The
is it from 88 minus between 14 and 25? Or is it the total revenue, what they're saying we would get would be between 14 and 25?
yes,
Yes.
if.
Oh, no.
The average
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
sales have been in the range of $230,000 to $235,000 the last 3 years. So you can assume under the current circumstances, it's going to be some amount less than that. And then they're offering you 15% of that number. So it certainly would be substantially less than the contract.
It was just the way it was worded, Peter, when it said a reduced
Yeah.
revenue downward to a range. So is that downward from the 88, or is that what the,
That's the range. That's not downward from the 88. The range would be in the
okay, because that's what it
15
made
to
it sound like.
$25,000.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to make a motion that we authorize our solicitor or finance director, or combination of, to go back to them with the number closer to half of what we originally agreed upon. 44,000 to me. I think we're conceding to what happened, but they're coming into their prime time of the year as well. And I think if they don't accept that, I think there's other people that might. That's just,
14K, I think there'll be other people.
huh?
44,000.
14K, I
Yeah.
mean, have a line out the door.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying 44,000. Yeah. Go ahead.
So should we put a time frame on this? Because if we get strung out time-wise,
We lose it.
then we're not going to have any
No,
option.
I would, if this is authorized, I will be speaking with them tomorrow.
Good. All right. So that's the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Council Flynn?
Yeah, just a question. So you're thinking that their business will be halved when all is said and done through the season?
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking there's other people that we go down there and we have to think about the revenue that we're going to be getting in. Because this budget's going to be a tough one.
One more question, Bob.
Go ahead.
Sean, at what phase does more beach parking open up?
July 1.
No, that's not true.
No?
So- No, because you have, to-
Body-wise, it's July 1, correct?
I'm sorry?
Bodies,
Well, you're looking at bodies-
gatherings?
The
Groups?
the distance between bodies hasn't changed. It's still 6 feet. You still have a 6-foot distancing between people. So you still have to look at the number of people on the beach and your ability to socially distance them. The number of people on the beach, it's above 5 or 10 or 15 already. We've got hundreds of people on the beach. So that's what's going to change on July 1st. It's just, you can have a larger gathering, but the distancing on the beach is still 6 feet between people.
So how many people can you put on the beach at a 6-foot distance?
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but, based on this past weekend with the tide, we were able to put the 480 cars in the lot. We estimate, I'd have to get the numbers.
2,000 people?
It's,
A little less than maybe 1,800? 1,900? No?
yeah, I would say. But it's the number of people on the beach. It's, based on the tide. It's not the number of
Well-
cars or the,
So why don't we, again, the motion's there. Why don't we present it, let them go negotiate?
Okay.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. I just think we can do better. Okay, item number 16, was my 16, I'm sorry, I hate to do that, I started my, over again. Boards and committees. Appointment of one member to the Board of Canvassers, bipartisan board, Democrat or Republican representative, term expiring March 2025. Do we have any nominees?
Motion to reappoint Lucy Ann Dion Thomas
Second,
Okay, motion second.
to the Board of Canvassers for a term expiring March 2025.
Question? Could you
Council
just
Flynn.
explain out how you came to that motion?
Because I know her, she's been reliable, and she's done a great job.
Very good. Thank
Just
you.
my opinion.
Mine too.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the appointment of one member to the Library Board of Trustees to complete a term expiring September 2020.
Motion to appoint Joan M. DeFinis to the Library Board of Trustees to complete a term expiring September 2020. And the reason I did so, because she's the only one that applied.
second.
Any further conversation? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Appointments to the Zoning Board of Review. Now, one regular member, term expiring April 2025. One first alternate, term expiring April 2021. One second alternate, term expiring April 2021. And one third alternate, term expiring April 2021. Do I have any nominees?
Yes, Mr. President. I'd like to nominate Thomas Silveria of 1195 Wapping Road as the first vacancy in the regular member.
Second.
Okay. Do we have any other nominees? Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we appoint Olin D. Gambrell Senior as the regular member position.
Second.
And we have a second.
Conversation?
Yes.
I did note, Mr. President, that Mr. Gambrell has missed 5 of the meetings of the last year. And Mr. Silvera, who Ms. Santos nominated, hasn't missed any meetings at all. I think that as an alternate, he should be moved up into a full member position, and perhaps Mr. Gambrell as an alternate until his schedule gets more stable.
Okay. That's good. Councilor Lombardo.
So, without getting too in-depth, I believe Mr. Gambrell had a health issue. I think everything has been resolved. He's been a really good member of this for a long time as a regular member. And Tom obviously has been doing it forever. So they're both good choices. I just think that I'd like to, if we can, give Mr. Gambrell a pass on this to a degree, because we all run into problems in our lives, and I think maybe I'm sure that was probably the issue that was going on with him.
I would just feel more confident with someone who has a history of good attendance, that's
Always got a
all.
great track record up to the point.
I understand
Okay.
that, I understand that,
Okay.
but, you have to make a
Okay.
decision based on the facts in front of you, so I'm
We have-
presenting those facts.
A motion by Council Santos to appoint Thomas Silvera as the regular member. And it's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Madam Clerk?
I didn't hear
Mr. Toronto, are you with us?
You said
Okay.
aye? Okay, so the only ones opposed were you and Rick.
Okay,
So the
So-
motion passed.
so Thomas
So Mr.
Silvera now
Silvera-
is appointed as a regular member, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now, we need to appoint the first alternate, term expiring April 2021.
Motion to appoint Owen D. Gambrell Senior as the first alternate
Second?
for a term expiring April 2021.
Any other nominations? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so Olin is the first alternate.
Motion to
Now we
reappoint,
need now we need nominations to appoint a second alternate.
okay. Motion to reappoint Andrew C. Bacon as the second alternate,
Second?
term expiring April 2021.
Any other nominations?
Question?
Council Flynn.
Yes, I did mean to ask this before, but typically we interview zoning board and planning
Can't hear you,
board.
Ms. Lynn.
I'm sorry, typically the council interviews zoning board and planning board candidates, and I just wanted to know, or to have it explained to the public why that wasn't happening for these positions.
I think the point is very simple. They've all served. Some of them have served, I think Severa might have served 30 years already.
Almost.
Served a lot of years. I mean, what are we gonna ask them? They
Well-
could interview us. Every one of these guys has served on this board for quite some time. And there's nobody new in this group. They've been there.
Well, we have interviewed those who have applied for reappointment in the past, so I just wanted to have it explained, that's
If
all.
we had a pool, but we just had enough people, we didn't have any additional people that applied. We had enough people that applied to fill the open positions, and they all just happened to have experience on the zoning board.
Just needed it answered. Thank you.
How was that answer? Pretty good? Not bad. Thank you. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to Andrew C. Bacon to be the
Second.
second alternate. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And the third alternate slot,
Motion to appoint David Michael Huntoon to the third alternate spot for a term expiring April 2021 to the Zoning Board of Review.
Second.
okay, motion second. Council Flynn. All set?
I am good. Thank you
Okay.
so much. I
All set.
appreciate that.
No, all set. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Vice President.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yeah, motion is second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Bob.